Okay, so we got our little setup. We had a little squiz around our interface today and did a bit of painting. So I'm going to whiz through this so we can use this as a reference. So I'm just going to sort of go about um, texturing this shield and see where we get to. So hopefully you can just see this as just a separate tutorial as its own and create the shield and pick up a few little things that I might do on the way as well. So it might be useful. All right, so I'm just going to go in and select my texture set settings and go bake mesh maps and make sure my output size is up to 4K. So this area here, high definition meshes, would be the area where you would put your high subdivision mesh. So if you're using ZBrush, you put your high poly mesh in here and selecting it. Okay, so that's where you put it in, and then it'll bake the high poly mesh onto the low poly mesh. So having that done, I'm just going to have this bake out all these different maps. So you can see it goes through normal, world space, ID, ambient occlusion, curvature, position, and thickness. Takes a little time, but all these maps come in useful later down the track when we want to start doing edge rearing and stuff like that. It's pretty useful to have these maps. So that's done. I'm going to say OK and close this up, and we can see this is where the maps are. So we can see that we can use this now, and we can see where these maps are over here in our project, and we can select these and use them later if we want to. So currently in here we've got my project in my layers, and let's go about starting to texture this thing. Okay, so without further ado, I'm just going to go create a new material and maybe go to materials. Actually, I'm going to use a default material. So let's just use some shelf tools. Go in here, have a look at like a metallic color or material, and I'm going to delete this and create a folder called steel bits, and this is going to be the area for where these steel bits are going to be. So I just made a folder, dragged it in there, and then in this, selecting this folder, I'm going to create a mask. I'm going to create a black mask. So everything is gone again. And I'm going to reveal it by going in here and selecting this polygon fill. And up here in the setting up here, we can see UV chunk fill. So that means I can select the areas where I want the metallicness to come up. So we're just going to reveal it in this mask. So an easier way of not having to like select stuff like here, an easier way to go about doing this is if I go to F3, we can look at our UV layout. So with F3 selected, we can select just these metallic bits here, and select that, select these, and I'm going to press F2, and now we're back at into our little selection here. So this is why it's really important to create UV maps, so you can easily select them when it comes to texturing. So we can see that I was easily able to select all these maps here. Really easy. Okay, so we're going to jump back in here. That's our steel bits. We can worry about that later, and let's make a mask for just the wooden areas. So I'm going to call this the wood of the maybe just wood, and then also I want to make another folder called their handles, and that's going to be for the handles at the back, because I want a different material for the handles in comparison to the shield. So the wood, I'm going to just bring in another basic material. Let's have a look down here. Wood rough. Okay, so we're going to throw that into this folder, and you'll see that it's covered everything. And the reason being is because the wood is on top of the steel bits here, so it's overriding everything. And the blending mode is on normal, meaning normal means it's a solid, so nothing can be blended with it. But if I turn that to something like overlay, or overlay with the metallicness as well, but we don't want to do that. We want to keep it as normal. And so here in this folder, we want to make a mask again. So create a black mask, and then we can just reveal the areas that we want the wood to be. So here I'm going to create a mask, and we're going to select the same tool, this one here, polygon fill, and we can even go back into UV mode by pressing F3 and selecting the shield here and there, and I think that's it for the wooden bits. So we can see now the back and front is shaded by the same material. Okay, so that's just the wood bits and the handles. Lastly, the handles. I want to color these into a different type of material as well. So I'm going to go into, I think, let's have a look at maybe smart materials. Smart materials is just another type of material which is a preset, and this is where you can have material that has a lot more settings to it. So I think this wood beach find is the selection that I want to go with. So I'm going to put that into handles, and again, it's going to override everything on top. And what we want to do is mask that only to the handles. So I'm going to go here, add a black mask, and go back into UV mode and find where the handles are. So these are the handles over here. And what we're going to do, use the same tool. I'm going to use the polygon fill and select all the way across like that. And that now has made this back bit textured with this smart material here. Cool. Okay, now, so next we want to put in, I think, a bit of paint on top of the wood. So this is wood roughness. This is kind of like the base material, the material that's right at the first layer before we even start putting some stuff on top. So what I want to do next is create some kind of paint layer. So you can experiment with like other materials if you want, like some of these like plastic matte finish or plastic rough. Like you can like experiment with them, but it's not really the point to just like throw in any kind of material and then that's it for the day. We want to be able to control and figure out what we're doing from the ground up. So it's always best to just start from scratch, really. Like you can use these as a good basis to start off, but it's much better just starting from scratch and then understanding your project a little bit better. So here we've got our bits. We're going to right click and we can start coloring them in so we know what's what. Steel bits are always going to be red, wood can be orange, handles can be yellow. And that's just so like I can navigate through these layers a lot easily and be able to start creating some subfolders underneath that as well. So underneath wood, I want to make a paint folder. So the paint is going to be on top. So I'm going to call that paint, and I'm going to maybe shade this green so I know that when I open that folder, green is going to be the paint. Okay, so in this paint folder, I'm going to create a add a filled layer, and this is going to go over the whole thing. And we don't want that. We want that to be in the paint folder here. So we're going to drag that in here. And the paint is here, but it's still applying to both sides. And I want to only apply to the front side of this shield. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the folder, create a mask. I'm going to create a black mask. And we're just going to reveal the area where we want it at the front. So by doing that, I'm going to select, oh look, I can play Warzone now. Fill layer, we're going to only have this visible on the front. So we're going to select this paint mask here, and we're going to create a mask for the front bit for where the shield is going to be painted at the front. So that is going to be this one, and we're going to select the mask. We are going to go polygon end, and we are just going to select this visible. So now go back here. The front and back is now separated from the material, and we've got a bit of edging going on here, which is like not very desirable for the look. We can tackle that in a second. But also I wanted to mention, if I turn off the color here, we've got this seam going on, this really ugly seam, where we've UV unwrapped it on this edge and that edge. Basically, the seams are not lining up. So there's a thing what you can do in wood roughness here. And select this, and then under your projection here. So this is just projecting by the UV. So if we have a look at the UV, it's projecting this texture downwards onto it. And if I move this, like if I offset this texture, so if I move this around, it's projecting onto there right now. And you can like scale this and you can do whatever, right? But it's not seamless on this edge. So what we can do, there's a thing called triplanar. And triplanar allows us, in this selection here under projection, triplanar, projects the texture from a position of the camera's being on each face of this box, essentially. So it's projecting this side, that side, front side, and all that. And when it gets to the corners, like this horizontal corner here, it's blending between the two. So we can see probably somewhere along here, it's going to blend. And this is really awesome because then see that you can see at this position here that it's kind of blending. You can see that it's blending. Potentially see it on this corner here. It's got a very tiny blend to it, but it's enough to like make it look seamless. Okay, so now we've got triplanar projecting the texture here, and maybe we want to rotate this to have the grain, the shield vertically potentially. So I'm using the in R to rotate this in the triplanar mode, and make sure that's in triplanar up here, not UV. You can also control this by using the scale as well and the rotation, because I like to manually sort of do it a bit. And one. Okay, cool. So with that deselected, and we're going to have the going on to the paint. I think this is a good example where we can show a bit of the manual stuff, procedural way of doing it. Let's try tackling the procedural way. Let's see if it actually works. So let's go and put in a mask for this, and a black mask. So it's removed it, but we want to add a fill to this. So selecting the mask here, I want to add a fill. So the fill is just a slider that tells what this mask is going to do. If it's going to be black, which is visible or invisible, I'm going to keep it as black. And in the fill here, under the grayscale, over here on the side, properties fill, we're going to add a procedural noise. So I'm just going to select this black and white spots and see how much contrast I can try and get to break up this edge. Not so much, really. Maybe it's working. This could be an easier way of trying to get rid of these this edge here, or we could use planar mode. See what that does. Sort of getting rid of it. Not so much. Not as much as I wanted. So let's try a different method. So say this didn't work. Let's just try the method that I was trying today. It's sort of okay, actually. Could get away with this. So essentially what I'm trying to do is make this a little bit more procedural in a way that the edges are broken up along here procedurally, but then repainting in the middle here. So what we can do, we can select my mask and then add paint. And then with the paint selected, make sure it's selected, not anything else. We can go in and just holding down Control right click, I can make my size of my brush bigger, going left and right. If you click and go up and down, it will change the hardness of it as well. But what we're going to do is bring back some of this detail here. So I'm going to go into brushes and select my, let's have a look. Select my, let's go artistic brush. Okay. And in the paint, we're painting white. So we can see if we press X, we can see the color change. So we want to paint in this color. So I'm going to paint in this color, right? And this is allowing me to paint back in the areas that we wanted, but also procedurally. Oh god, it's not really working, is it? Sort of a bit of an overhang there, kind of bled out to the side a bit where I didn't want it to. So what I'm saying is essentially we can go in and color this in basically and still have the ability to go back and also change it to black and remove some bits here if we want. And what I'm trying to say here is that we can always go back to this black and white spots that we had and, you know, change up the way that the edge looks. We can give it multiple random looks on the edge, which gives it a little bit more of a procedural look to it. And with the paintbrush, we can always just touch up some of these bits here where we don't want it to show too much of the harsh line going on along here. There is another way to potentially break up these ugly straight lines, is you can add an effect to this. So selecting the masking, you can add under your effects, you can add a filter. And then under the filter, you can select this filter and potentially blur it if you wanted to. Blur it a little bit. So maybe that's not a good idea. What if we put it underneath there? And the blur intensity is too harsh. Maybe not so good idea. Let's get rid of that. Okay, well, I think this is not too bad so far. I'm just gonna, you know, touch up some of these edges, you know, some extra areas where potentially the paint might have spilt away from when painting this, or putting some paint on this shield. Alright, so that's one setup. And what we can do is we can even add on top of this a little bit more noise. Selecting masking, we can go to effects and then add another, we can add a generator if we want. And in the generator, we can select the generator parameters and go to maybe dirt. Let's try dirt. Let's try dirt. And with dirt, we've got a whole bunch of settings here. The level of the dirt, the amount of the dirt, the dirt contrast, the grunge amount, the grunge scale. Play around with this. And so that's one of them we're going to do, okay? And this, we're going to give this a color. So select the fill. So that's the mask and all the effects on the mask. That's the fill. And we're just going to give this a color. Let's color this. It's kind of aqua blue. Right? Maybe a little bit brighter than that. Yeah, that's not too bad. About there. I think that's cool. Alright. Okay, next. We want to add a little bit of a height map to this paint. So let's select the fill and we're already in it. And we want to change the amount of how glossy this thing is. So let's go, maybe this paint is actually really shiny because it's fairly new. It's like a new kind of color. And the height of it, let's just increase a bit of the height. So it looks like it's actually painted on top. So we can see with a bit of height. adds that extra bump map to it. And so that could be one layer of paint. And then let's duplicate this. So we're going to select this, Control D, and we're going to select the color, and let's change this to a darker color. So moving up the hue, or reducing the value, maybe reducing the saturation, and maybe slightly moving up the hue. And we've got this in the same spot, so we want to scatter this in a different random noise. So we'll go into our mask of this new one and select our dirt, and then let's hit random seed. So now this is randomly scattering this color all around this area. And we can reduce the contrast and play around with all these settings. Let's say maybe this one doesn't have to have such a higher height to it. And what else do we have? See that there's a little bit of weirdness going up here, so let's just try and fix that. So what's going on there? I think it's the dirt layer. So it looks like the edge on the dirt is increased, so I think this is edge masking. Let's have a look. Let's reduce it. Maybe crunch them out. Let's dial it back a bit. Use triplanar. So instead of using the UV maps, we can turn on triplanar, and the dirt level could be reduced a little bit. Maybe in this scenario, maybe dirt isn't good. Maybe if the first layer was good enough for it, maybe the second layer we can use something else. So let's just delete this mask, and we've got this other color on top. All right, let's use a different fill. So selecting the mask, we can use a different fill. So we can go to procedurals, make sure we add in a new bucket. So selecting this, let's go to effects and add a fill. And in the fill, let's add into our texture map, let's add another type of noise. So all it is really just adding a bunch of noise together. Dirt 4. Let's put that in. Okay, it's not too bad. Increase and decrease this. And let's got a different pattern to it. And let's have a look. We can go to the height. Let's just reduce the height for this overall. So now it's sort of blending in with the height that we have from the original. Let's duplicate this, go in here, change the color of this one slightly, maybe even darker. And then let's go and have a look at this dirt. Let's randomize this dirt and maybe scale it a little bit bigger. And sort of maybe go back to the original. I think the height on this is a little bit too high. So let's go maybe halve that amount. 2. That's a bit better. And so this is how you build up color, essentially. And you can keep doing this over and over again. And you can keep repeating this until all the colors start to sort of blend together and we don't see the bottom of it. We could have had potentially something above it like this, and then reduce the opacity, and then we can reduce the opacity of this, and maybe we needed a paint overall underneath. So let's just duplicate that one, and we'll call this base paint. And let's make this like a super dark color. And we're just going to remove dirt here, and we're going to keep the paint that we wanted. And the black and white spots, we can remove that as well. So now it's just keeping the shape here. And oh, now why is this back? So at different levels, maybe, you know, we tried to fix it up, but it all sort of layered upon each other, and now it's built up here again. So these are some of the problems you might run into. So here, I'm just going to go back and have a look at this mask. And you know what? I'm probably just going to paint in here. I'm going to select this mask and give it an effect. Give it a paint effect, so then this is kept procedural. I can always go back and change it if I wanted to. So I'm just going to select these bits, holding down Shift a lot quicker than our last task there. Just roughening this edge up a bit more so that it's not so perfect. And who knows, maybe they, you know, you can think about the story behind how this is being made as well. Maybe they did have like a paint dip machine or something that's perfectly cut off like that. But realistically, no, I don't think so. So here we go. Well, it's saving. So when it's saving, it usually does take time if there's a lot of layers, and it's sort of saving to somewhere. Not sure where it's saving to. So I'm just going to save this to my desktop. So just in case I don't lose it. Okay, and another little hot tip. When you're doing the selection thing, you'll see like this wireframe come up, and sometimes it's just really hard to see what's going on, especially when you're looking at this view and that view, or like what are you selecting? Go up here, top right, to your texture settings, then hit this button here. I think. Oh no, sorry, my bad. It's the display one. This one here, one underneath it. Just scroll down all the way to the bottom, and there's wireframe opacity, and usually I put that down, and you can change the color if you want. I usually do like a blue. I can sort of see it better. There we go. Looks a little bit better, right? Okay, so there's another little hot tip. Okay, so that's the paint. You know, it's getting there. Could be better. We can add more of a paint stroke to it. So this is, let's say this is a paint edge, and now I'm going to add another effect and call this another paint wearing. So with that selected, I'm going to paint in where I want the wood to be showing. Okay, so let's select a brush, and I'm going for something that's probably showing the area that's going to be rough. You know what? Maybe not do a paint. Let's just not do the manual way, and let's keep it a little bit more procedural. So selecting the mask, I'm going to go to our effects and add a fill. Here we go. And in our fill, again, remember this is just showing something and removing it. I'm going to add a procedural texture, and let's have a look. Just experiment. That pretty cool. Already got some artwork going on there. Or you know, do a whole bunch of stuff. This could be your overall look if you wanted to. But in saying that, you know, like you can put any kind of texture in here and see what it does. It's a pretty fun little thing, you know, just experimenting with different looks, and you know, everything kind of comes together when you're putting things together. Really trippy stuff. But let's have a look at more of the realistic side of things. Let's just bring in this like a grunge kind of color. Maybe not that one. Maybe something a little bit more contrasty. I'm reading this one. Yeah, that's not bad. and it's sort of the wrong direction. I kind of want the direction of this to maybe go 90 degrees. So here in the rotation, change it 90, and I'm gonna maybe make these a little bit more contrasty and give it a bit of a randomness, sort of cycle through these randomness. There we go, got something nice. Okay, so that's not too bad. And let's say the areas that have been, I guess, faded away could have some kind of marks on it or something. Or let's say, yeah, it's not too bad. Let's add some marks to it. So this is just the paint layer. Let's add another folder called, I don't know, battle marks. So in here, we can add something like a fill, drag it in here, and we only want it to be masking an area. So battle marks, we're going to add a mask, black mask, and on this black mask we're going to add just a paint. And so with that paint, before we get into the paint, let's make this white and see what kind of material we're using before we paint it on. So I'm going to make that white, reveal it. So what I want to do is I want to make this have some, some sword marks that go across, but I want that to indent the wood a bit. So what I want to do, I want to select my fill layer, and I know that if it's going to be indented, my height is going to be negative. We don't need any metallicness. Probably roughness is going to be a little bit more rough on the side. And our color is going to be potentially the same kind of color as the wood. So we can go into here and color pick some kind of brown color like this. What I want to do, I want to go for a darker color for that. And next, what I want to do, I want to go into my blending mode. So this is my group, my folder here. I want to change my normal blending mode to something like overlay or multiply. Let's go multiply. So this is going to make the wood dark. Okay. So, but everything is revealed at the moment. So what we want to do is invert that. So make that a black mask and then add an effect, go into add paint. And so now we can go in here and use the paint tool and paint in some battle scars, right? But this isn't the right brush to use. So we want to go to brush and go to alphas. And alpha's got a whole bunch of these awesome black and white stamps that you can use. So let's have a look at something that's like some strokes. It could be something like that. Maybe this one. Nope. Too much like hair. Something that's like sword marks. So just have a look and see what could be an interesting look. And you can always import your own brushes into here as well if you make any. But some of these defaults are alright. Get some stuff out of it. Let's what are these veins? Nah. I guess this is where like you just want to make the right decision and choosing. Here it is, scratches, sandpaper. We've got scratches, dents. We've got, this is something I was sort of looking for. Okay, and in this fill layer we want to maybe reduce the height a little bit more. like that. So when we look at it, that's a pretty strong looking cut. Alright, can make this maybe a little bit darker, brighter, lighter. Experiment with blending mode, so maybe overlay might be a bit better. And maybe in this paint here we can make it a little bit, I don't know, darker maybe. And if I don't like it, I can always select the paint layer and then inverse my paintbrush. I can just remove it, paint over it, and inverse it again. Maybe this. This feels more like it, where like maybe someone's been stabbing the shield with a sword or something. So maybe, you know, having these scattered around like so, like this, could be pretty cool. You'll see in a minute. I'll just erase these areas where I don't want. So let's go into brushes and select maybe just the hard edge and press X to just make this like this and just remove some areas and try and make it as sort of random as possible. These are just maybe some warrior was just trying to poke them. Could be anything, I don't know. Whatever you want. It's just adding extra detail to it. You can see it's like quite dark. So maybe we can reduce the amount it's blending with. So in here, in every folder, you can change the opacity of how much it's blending by. So now here, it's just 50%. That's 100%, 50%. You can also, what you can do, this is changing the blending mode of the fill color on overlay by 50%. But what we can do, we can go and click up here and change under the height. And the height is still 100%. So we can also control the height of how much this has been indented by. So we have so many different levels of control to change what's happening in this overall look. Okay, and then next let's just have a look on the other side here, and look at that. We've painted the back side that we didn't want to. So that's in this one, and let's try and remove it from the back. I don't know how that ended up. It's probably when we put this there. That's right. So let's go here, select my mask, and let's go and paint on top of that if we want. So paint, and we can go here and just use our selection tool, and we can deselect the back of it. Again, if we want, make sure it is black, so press X and remove it. And I'm going to go back here and I'll clean up the edges a bit. So this can act as my back mask, really. Yeah, so I didn't really plan for that, but like you always like run into these kind of mistakes all the time, and it's good to sort of see this happening in action, because you know you're definitely gonna run into these kind of issues, and it's important to try and correct these little problems that you might come across. But yes, it's not too hard work to clean stuff up like this. There we go. And that was just the way that this was UV unwrapped. So maybe I could have planned a little bit better and put the seam underneath where this metallic this metal bit is, so then I don't have to worry about, you know, the seam here and painting it out all the time. So there we go. So this is just the front part, and now the next step will be the metallic part of this. So here we have everything, battle marks, the wood, now the handles. Talking about a bit of the handles, you probably want to put some where they're going to hold. So in the handles, let's just open up this folder and let's create another kind of fill. So that's another folder as well. So this is a smart material, so create a folder for us. What we're going to do is add a fill layer, and what we want to do is make this just a color. So I'm going to hold down Alt and just click, so then it's just selecting the color. And let's make this just sample a color and make it a bit darker maybe. And we're going to turn this into, I'm going to switch back to the base color mode and go to overlay. So this is going to make it look like it's being worn. Okay, but all we have to do is reveal the area that we want it being worn. So we're going to add another mask, so black mask, and we're going to go in and use our brushes and select maybe like dirt one or something. And so this is going to be the area where you know, they'd be most likely handling the shield, guessing. And we can add and subtract all around here, maybe put their face up against this and sort of along there. And also we can really like have a look at the other side, see what's going on there. And then what we can do here, we can maybe reduce the amount. Okay, and what we want to do here, we can reduce the opacity of it a bit, just like that. So it's a little bit more subtle. We don't want it so harsh. But it's good to see it harsh at the start, so then you know where you're placing your painting. And then you just reduce it a bit. And so now you can slightly see there's a little bit more handling going on there. Alright, what's next? You can see front is fairly okay for the moment. And I mean, like, you can just work on this for hours and hours and like trying to refine things. Let's see. Let's try and add maybe a little bit of rust around the areas here. So let's see if I can add some rust coming off from these metallic bits. So what you can do, you can add, let's just go in and have a look at some of our materials. So under materials, we'll find under rust, rust course. Yep, let's just drag this in. It's been a while since I used this one. So this is rust, right? And it's, I'm just going to increase the amount of the tiling. And let's see if I can put a mask on this, and then in the mask we're going to select the effect and create a generator. On the generator we're going to select generate, and let's see if dripping rust will work well with this or not. Dripping rust. Not too much. We can have a look at our height, and we can change our height map as normal, so it's not blending with the height map underneath, and it's sort of taking its own height. Okay, so I think this dripping rust didn't work as well as I thought it would. So what we can do, we can just change, have a look at something else. Let's see. We can use the mask editor, and let's have a look at the curvature. That's the curvature. The ambient occlusion. thought that was the one, but nope. Let's look at maybe light. No. You know what? I think this could be something that's more like a hand-painted kind of thing. Ambient occlusion's alright if we can find the balance between, if we can find the areas, there we go. So we can see it's avoiding these areas and we want the opposite of that. So let's invert that. There we go. So ambient occlusion was the one that we were looking for. And we want to just restrict it to sort of around these areas. So we just want to contrast that, increase the balance. We don't go too far. We don't want to blur it too much. And so it's kind of happening on the sides here, and we don't want it on the sides. So we can paint it out. We can go to mask and go to paint, and then let's just say, don't show it around here. We don't want you around here. Get out of here. Rust. And maybe it would have been a little bit more simpler if we did have UV seams on the edges of this, so then we could just easily select them and remove the rust from there. And this rust looks really reddish. I don't know if I'm a fan of that. And I'm just holding down Shift, clicking, holding down Shift, and just removing it. Then we can focus on, okay, well, rust goes downwards, so we don't want them on the tops. They're these little rivets, or whatever they are. Okay. Very subtle, but this counts, All of this sort of falls into place. So this rust here, let's change the color of it to more like a, I don't know, sort of like a worn down rust instead. Okay, and then there's another really cool tool that you can use. If we go to the rust and then add another paint, add a paint, and we can call this leaks, paint leaks. So what we can do is this really cool particle tool under here, and we can select leaks. And with this, we can just paint here in the color white and add some extra paint leaks. And it'll try and act like the same as gravity. So, it's a pretty cool little tool. But we don't want them on the top. That's the crappy thing about that. Maybe we can even have a look on the other side later. And you know what? Oh yeah, it's not going there because we're not working on that one. Yeah, let's just reduce the amount and just go into here and slightly reduce how much of it is showing or not. Oh, we're still in height. So make sure you're in the right color space. So we're going to go in base, reduce this ever so slightly, so then it blends a bit better. It's all about blending, guys. Okay, well, anyway, it's getting a bit late, and I think that sort of sums it up quite briefly. We can go have a look at this front bit, and I'll just finish up the metallic bits for you. So in here, we've got our base material, and let's say the shiny, make this a little bit shinier, or too shiny, something like that, all right? And on top of this, it's going to be sort of like the wearing. So what we want to do is we can bring in another texture. Let's bring in another smart mask, another material, and let's just use steel, rust, and wear. Okay, let's throw that in on top of it. Yep, really blackish kind of look. And let's say this has a little bit more of a height to it. So it's on top of it and it's higher than the underlying one. So maybe if I can, technical parameters, height range, height position, say that's higher than the one that's underneath. So the underneath one doesn't have any height, I think. It's at 0.5 height position. And this one is a 0.58, so it should stand a little bit higher than the one beneath it. So selecting this steel, rust, and wear, we can select a black and white mask. And selecting the mask, we're going to go to our effects and go add generator. Selecting the generator, we're going to go over here to the parameters and then select maybe metal edge wear. And let's see. There we go. So it's a lot higher than I thought it would be. So let's just reduce the wear level. I'll increase it like that. Yep. And the contrast, I don't want to be too contrasty. The blending, I don't want to be contrasty either. Grunge amount, let's reduce the amount of grunge. Grunge scale, let's just make that a little bit bigger. Smoothness, let's increase the smoothness maybe a little bit. Ambient occlusion, yeah, I can cover up those bits a bit more. These little rivets. There we go. Let's have a look at now the height again. So selecting the fill, let's go to the height and maybe 0.5. Whoa, too much. 0.51. Slightly higher. 0.52. There we go. A little bit better. A bit of randomness going on there. And we can always go in and say maybe this middle part is going to be quite revealed. So we're going to add in just a paint. Select the paint and go to brushes and reveal maybe just the midpoint of this. It's been potentially worn down a lot more than the other areas. So now I'm painting that back in. Actually, I need to remove it like this. So now the most used part of this weapon is the front bit of it, and potentially these bits. There we go. We're going to add some extra little bits along the sides, revealing these areas. And we have just a shield. Nice. And yes, I would probably do a lot more work at the back of it if I have the time, but for this demonstration purposes, this is kind of more the basics of trying to understand how all this masking kind of stuff works here. Okay, and so now in the end, all I want to do is export this as a texture. So we're going to save that again. What we need to do is go File, Export Textures, and then we just want to select the type of output template we want, which is just a normal PBR metal roughness. And we're just going to export this, say, to the desktop for the moment, and call this, I'm just going to call this test. If it doesn't crash. Yep, okay, here, select folder, and go double check the file type. We can make sure that's a PNG and it's 16-bit, so that's a higher resolution. We can also look at the file size, which is based on the texture size set. It should be 4K, but just in case, you can turn that to 4K. Let's just go export. So this will export, then we can have a look at the output directory, and this is the output. And next we'll go into lighting and have a look at that in week 5. All right. So essentially, in the end, this is what you're going to get, and this is all the this is what we're going to port into Arnold to get it shaded. Cool.